All right, so good afternoon, good morning, good evening. This is I'll name this segment later. GTG spits that grease, so on and so on. Title forever in the works. So, if that same title hasn't given me away yet, I wanted to talk to you guys about DSP's obsession with his detractors and or unhealthy relationship with internet hate. Oh boy, boy. So, okay, DSP's obsession with his detractors, an unhealthy relationship with internet hate. Let's tackle the internet hate part first. Um, DSP's relationship with internet hate stems from his need for attention, his need to be recognized and to be acknowledged. To be honest, and it's a little bit more deep seated than like the average troll. Like when you think about when I've had conversations with people when it comes to like some of these lolcows and their need for attention and so on and so forth. And I've heard some people. I've actually had the opportunity, big ups to them, to speak to a couple guys from the Christian community, kind of comparing notes. And like I said, I really appreciate their time, to be honest, because they didn't know it to me, and they damn sure didn't have to give it to me, especially given my reputation. But they were uh, they were receptive to my frame of thought, and they gave me a lot of insight. And it's though the DSP and Chris Chan situations are similar, I wouldn't necessarily say it's the same. That led to, well, not led to. I've had the privilege of speaking to some people in Girl World, and I kind of asked them, hey, what are your thoughts on, you know, mainly Amber well, I was focusing on Foodie Beauty in particular, but some of them were well versed in Amber, and like, what are their thoughts on them coming up there and humiliating themselves on the regular and getting all this shit talk? Why deal with it if they're in a allegedly in a financial situation where they can afford not to, or if they really feel like they're better than what it was? And like they said, they saw some similar correlations between DSP and basically, the two queens of Girl World, but it's still actively different because it comes down to the individual. Lolcows share similar tendencies, certainly, but it also comes back down to the individual. But they did, yet again, they were somewhat receptive to my theory, in the fact that it just really just comes down to attention, good, bad, or otherwise, and what they can do to profit off of that attention. That's really, I mean, at the basis, you could say that for any lolcow. Um, DSPs is a bit more, is somewhat deep seated, I should say. I can't say a bit more, because all of these people are damaged in some way, shape, or form, and they never were able to work it out or figure it out. And why was that? Because they're all deep into their victim complex. It wasn't their fault. They didn't cause the situation. They think they're just dealing with it. So how are they the problem? Why do they need to actually go and work it out or say sorry or acknowledge anything outside of the genuine hate that's coming towards them? And in a lot of ways, it's a really sick parasocial relationship with hatred itself, with the concept of it. And I think it really stems from the fact that it's the most consistent thing in their lives, having people put them down, criticizing them, and hating them. Now, one thing that you find that's an active correlation between all these lolcows is the idea of criticism and actual hatred. They can't tell the difference. Most people can't, or some people can't, I should say. Most regular people can't do it, but lolcows definitely can. Lolcows definitely can. You can look at Review Tech USA as a fucking fantastic example of him running around calling detractors weirdos. And then if you look at set detractors that he's calling weirdos, they're people that have criticized him in one way, shape, or form. That wasn't hate. That was just criticism. The same criticism that he doles out himself. But does he call it hatred when he does it? No, I don't. No, I don't. He calls it constructive criticism. But when other people do it to him, then all of a sudden he don't like it. So that is what that is. DSP is no different. And if you go back to the Dense Sea Scrolls and whatnot, if you haven't seen those, and you look at DSP's interactions on the internet and whatnot, he checks off pretty much the majority of the boxes for antisocial behavior, despite the fact that he's been online as long as he does. You know what I'm saying? Because even within the online space, he has his own bubble of isolation. He's always coming up with some type of or building some type of wall of protection to isolate him from all the things that are considered negative, i.e. all the things that he does that can bring in criticism. And so a lot of the hate is self-perpetuating, and he's just too stupid to see it. And though he tells you, oh, I wish they would go away, I wish they would let me just do my thing, I just want to do positive content, I just want to make entertaining content for people, the reality is he doesn't believe his own bullshit. And if the hatred went away, he goes away. And he knows it. Deep down in DSP's soul, he knows it. Wings knows it too. You know what I'm saying? Review Tech USA knows it. King Cobra is open about that shit. He'll sit there and say, hey, fuck the trolls, I'm obsessed with them, I own them, whatever. But he knows that he's nothing without the trolls. You know what I'm saying? Because he understands that his genuine fans are trolls. Or at least some of them anyway. You know, I think Cobra understands it better than most. And or at least he's able to recognize it, I think. At least in his situation, because that's not universal for every locale. So that's the situation with that. I don't think DSP will. I think DSP's relationship with internet hate, in particular, just stems from the fact that he doesn't have any other stimulants in his life. He never really did. You know what I'm saying? Remember, this is the same individual who said if it wasn't for YouTube, he wouldn't feel important, he wouldn't feel valued, and he doesn't know what he would do with his life. Ironically enough, given our current timeline, Mutahar had apparently said that shit too back in the day. Womp womp. Which leads to a real interesting scenario I'm building up in my head on why Mutahar really didn't want to talk to DSP now. Is it possible that when he looks at DSP, he sees himself? Or at least he sees some of his shortcomings? I don't know. We'll see. Maybe that's something we'll speak about later. In any case, we could go further with that, with the internet hate, but let's transition over to DSP's detractors. Which keep in mind, he's the one who labeled them. And I honestly think when the first detractor emerged, which would have had to have been DSP cult leader, I honestly think he thought, okay, I'll have this little hate group on the side. Anything that goes bad, anything that shows me in a bad light that's been emphasized on YouTube, I'll just blame them, and then there you go. There's my out. And that's really how DSP kind of uses his detractors, or at least how he used to. Again, utilitarianism. His detractors fill a purpose or a niche. And so whenever something goes bad, or he's made to look stupid, or he says something stupid that has been embellished upon or intensified, he can just point to his detractors. The problem is, as DSP started doing that, he started becoming more obsessed with what they were saying and doing. And he realized and he identified that, hey, I am doing this, but because DSP is mentally ill himself and mentally disabled, he can't actually stop. So instead of trying to actually work to better himself to try to fix the problem, like what he tries to tell us in the current day and age, which is 2025, by the way, instead he lashes out at them for bringing a spotlight to it. In the same way, honestly, on why he doesn't like, he hates. The same way he hates Review Tech USA for calling him out for the Pokemon Sun and Moon situation back in the day. Same concept. With that said, DSP can't focus really on the group of detractors as a whole, right? He can't actually go after all of our arguments because not all of us have the same argument. Yeah, there's a lot of us that are saying the same thing or parroting or whatever you want to call it, but not everybody actually does that. And so it's easier to just group everybody up, call it a hive mind and whatever, and move that way instead of addressing each individual point. And then DSP wants to go further and say, oh, well, they'll just push the goalpost back, but that's what he did with Stutter and Craig. And side scrollers, that's what he does to Keemstar. You know what I'm saying? So it's funny how someone who calls, who accuses people of pushing goalposts is someone who habitually does it himself. So that's funny. In any case, that's why he's always kind of focused on one particular person. That's why, truth be told, if DSP didn't isolate Evil AJ, and this is how you don't play the way he did, I think this is how you don't play would have still been successful. But would Evil AJ be considered the menace that he is? He's outside DSP's fucking door and shit with a fucking axe ready to break in that bitch, saying, you know what I'm saying? You know, here's Eddie. Is he really, would it really have gotten to that point, or did DSP embellish and lie, truth be told, to get Evil AJ up to that stature? Same thing with fucking SOK. Actually, truth be told, in some ways, by DSP giving SOK as much attention as he did, in turn, it kind of ended up leading to their downfall in some way, shape, or form. I mean, outside of all the gay ops they were doing against other detractors and stuff like that, but that's another story for another day. So, as well as some of the other unsavory stuff they were just doing amongst themselves, mainly Fred, obviously. So there's that. So look at that situation. And then after that, he tried to focus on Snort Burnell for a bit of time. He obviously spent he still does. He tried to hyper focus on Tevin and whatnot. And look at where that got him. Yeah, he got Tevin removed from Twitch for a little while. You know what I'm saying? For a little while, about 2 years, maybe a little more, a little less. And then all of a sudden, when Tevin gets invited back, he comes back with managed partnership, and DSP ends up losing all his shit not long afterwards. You know what I'm saying? You want to keep going further? Let's go ahead and do that. Look at what DSP tried to do when he waged his war against Secret Limited. And he's been kind of actively doing that over the years, saying, oh, well, he's just taking advantage of you guys. He's sitting there taking all your guys' hard work over the years and putting it in a video and doing it for profit. DSP's been saying that shit for years. Is it true? No, it's not. Everybody who knows Secret Limited knows that shit, and I have no reason to boast Secret Limited up and whatnot. You know what I'm saying? He's not cool with me. But it's, you know what I'm saying, let's be honest and say what's fair is fair. Secret Limited has never taken advantage of anybody from that category. He occasionally watched the shit, he documented what he thought was interesting, and he put it together. At the end of the day, nobody has ever come out their face and accused Secret Limited of stealing anything. Because he doesn't. Very obvious that he doesn't. So there's that. DSP is quick to try to demonize someone and try to turn a community against them because he sees that that's what happens in his own community. People, those dents get demonized all the time. The Gouty Gestapo, like that's, I call them that for a reason. Them guys are constantly fucking looking to stab each other back and eat each other alive so they can be last one standing, which is ironic because Proper is actually working on something which stems from something that I said a few years ago, in the fact that, you know what I'm saying, Only Iced Coffee put in work and he got what he wanted out of it. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna leave it at that because I don't want to spoil the project that Proper's working on. But I've got a lot of faith in what Proper's doing. It's gonna be good. But it's just like that. You know what I'm saying? It's look at how far Swaggins got before he kind of got boxed out. And he did people dirty too while he was over there. You know what I'm saying? The only person that you can really say who actually came up through the ranks, maybe two people. The only two people you could actually say that came up through the ranks over there as an OG fucking DSP dent was probably KG and fucking Darkside Viking. Or Brightside Viking. Darkside Viking, that's funny. But, well, I guess you could say that now because he shits on DSP on the forum sometimes. Anyway, Brightside Viking and fucking KG are probably the only two guys you could actually give that to. I could probably think of actually three more people now that I think about it. But outside of that, you know what I'm saying? The rest of them have made names for themselves by screwing each other over or just being stupid as hell. So there you go on that. And that's what DSP has around himself perpetually. You know what I'm saying? And it amuses him, but I also think he's ashamed of it. Because DSP is constantly saying, oh, well, you guys are intelligent. You guys are, of sound mind and this, that, and the third. And that's the furthest thing from it. And I think on some level, DSP identifies that. But it's all he has. Just like how he defended that pedophile Derek. You know what I'm saying? He didn't want to give Derek up because Derek was all he has. He's that one constant and consistent, to be honest, thing in DSP's life that he couldn't give up. Now that I say that, that's what DSP detractors are to DSP in some way, shape, or form. They are constant and they are consistent. And for someone like DSP, that's what he's looking for. He's looking for something that's consistent in his life. Something that's constant. Something that's reliable. Now that's kind of wild, right? Depending on internet hate and internet haters to be reliable and dependable, but that's what detractors are. And if you don't believe me, Keemstar tried to say that same shit. Oh, your detractors are your real fans and this, that, and the third, whatever. We can scratch that bullshit. But we can say that about them that Keem was right, as in they're reliable. They're there. You know what I'm saying? They're probably there and more dedicated than even some of DSP's fans. But then again, if you're a DSP fan and you have an IQ of 60, I mean, what it is. You know what I'm saying? You're going to show up because this is part of your routine. You'll never be able to add anything to the conversation. That's why DSP don't want no conversations with them. You don't believe me on that? What happened to that fucking suggestion box bullshit? Most of that stuff is detractor stuff. Hands down. I would say 90% of it is. It is what it is. And anything that requires DSP to have any deep thought or actually do something is obviously a detractor meme or a troll, and it can't be used because that would only give, you know, even more light to the detractors. And yet at the same time, as much as he needs detractors, honestly, he also resents them too. Because now, in our current day and age in 2025, he's so desperate that he wants them to come to the table and play ball, put up money for it and shit. DSP has kind of hinted at that over the years, so to speak. But it's only become prominent because of Duty. Because Duty needed to go ahead and show DSP how much money he makes off of him monthly, and a slow month too, if I remember correctly. And now DSP is dead set on thinking that every detractor out here is making that or close to that or whatnot. And now everybody needs to pay up, basically pay to play, to be honest. And truth be told, that's not what that is at all. That was one guy who fucking lost himself for a minute there and whatnot, and showed his entire ass to try to prove something that doesn't mean shit to anybody. And now DSP is sitting there weaponizing that shit and trying to demonize him and everybody else, which isn't really going to go anywhere. But I guess that does open up the question of, should detractors, you know what I'm saying, be able to monetize, which that goes back to SOK for those of you who remember. But the truth is that actually stems back to early Medicare and his thoughts of, you know, trolling people or making fun of people online and doing it for the love of the game, if you will, and not doing it for any gains. But that opens up a much larger conversation. Maybe we can do a video on that later. Why not? It's an interesting subject, I think, on monetizing fucking lolcows. But anyway, that'll be for another day. But based off of what Duty did, that led to this. Now, is that a real hindrance to anybody? No. But now DSP is getting to the point now where he's literally begging his detractors to buy in to continue the content. Why would anybody in their right mind, outside of Duty and some of the people who move around him, why would anybody do that? That's stupid as shit. Did Duty get all of this mileage? Did he get to where he got by donating to DSP? I don't know. You have to ask Duty about that. If Duty's been paying DSP since Jump Street, since he was monetized to pay to play, then that's on him. But for everybody else, you know what I'm saying, no one had to throw any money behind this bullshit. And look at how far all of us got. So, you know what I'm saying, look at what we got out of it, more importantly. So you have to look at it that way. You have to look at at both sides of that argument. But here's the problem, so to speak. Now DSP is starting to become codependent on his haters and detractors to get money from them directly, instead of making money off of them, which he's never really been able to do per se. Even though when he hits his 150 goal, belting the trolls and all that fucking gay ass shit, now he wants to ask for money from them directly. Look at how low the internet has brought him. Look at how low internet hate has brought him. To now you have to beg your ops for money. And most of you may be like, oh, well, maybe we should champion Duty for that. Well, that's on you. That's on you. The reality is DSP was going to get there anyway, if DSP wasn't already there. So I don't know if that's anything to give anybody credit for, not just Duty, anybody. I don't know if that's anything to be given credit for, to be honest. But the reality is that speaks to DSP. And that really speaks to how far he's fallen. And then this is post Kino Casino. So obviously DSP has PTSD off of that. All of it kind of becomes a moot point at the end of the day. The reality is that DSP can't live without hate. Even on SRK, even on event hubs, on Capcom United, the FGC as a whole, whether you look at it as something real or what isn't. And what, and if you are willing to say that, which you have the rights to, is any community actually real? If you look at it from that circumstance. Anyway, the point being is that DSP needs hate. He thrives off of it. He lives for it. He's addicted to it. He's addicted to it. When DSP goes on these long spiels and shit, he's not talking to the dents. He's talking to detractors. He's always done that. He's always tried to appeal to them, or I can't say reason, because reason with detractors, because you have to have reason to do that. But like you have to actually have actual reasoning, I should say, to do that. And DSP clearly has never had that. He's always tried to appeal to his detractors in some way, shape, or form. He's in a lot of ways, he looks at them as an extension of himself. You know what I'm saying? Once you start getting to the point where you're saying, oh, all the views that you guys are making, those are my views. DSP's been saying that for years. Oh, all the money that those guys are making, that's my money. You're paying, when you're paying a detractor, you're just paying me. You just don't know it. DSP's actually said that, which is wild. And maybe that right there is one of the justifications that Duty has to give DSP money. Maybe. I don't know. You have to ask him. Maybe that's the thing. But it does, that's a strange sort of cope to sit there and say, those views are my views. Or those views are my views, and that money is my money. Well, if that's the case, then why don't they go to you? Oh, well, you guys are putting your stuff out before I get a chance to. You're streaming all day on the same goddamn platform, Phil. No one's stealing from you. You're just mad because no one will watch it. They got to go through a filter. And hell, you got people in the current day and age that are tired of filters. They're just tired of watching the shit altogether. So that immediately not immediately, but that almost negates your argument as a whole. And for any of you who do feel tired or burnt out of all this shit, you're welcome to walk away, take a break. You can always come back. You can always come back. You know what I'm saying? As long as DSP draws breath and shit and taking a snort, there's going to be someone there to laugh at it. It's not going anywhere. That's the reality. Even when DSP expires, well, he's expired now. When DSP finally checks out, there'll still be people making content on him. To be honest, I honestly think there'll be an even larger uptick when he does pass away. And that's a really morbid thing to say, and I recognize that, but it's true. Same thing with Chris Chan. Same thing with Wings of Redemption. Same thing with a lot of people. It's what sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, sometimes. Let's reword it. There's a very few people that are willing to stab a person in the chest. To say outright publicly, you know what? I don't fuck with that person, and fuck them and fuck everything that they stand. And everybody who they stand with. There's very few people that are willing to say that. But when you're dead, that can be confirmed. When you're gone, and that can be confirmed, that's when people bring the daggers out and start going at the fucking the corpse, at the carcass. And they do it with the type of zeal that makes you think, or as they want you to think, that you'd be willing to do that if they were actually alive. It's not something unique to the internet. History has always proven that. So this is no different. I honestly think the one time that DSP will go mainstream is the day he checks out. And I feel the exact same way actually about Amberlynn Reed and Foodie Beauty. I think the sorry, even though I do that a lot, I feel that the recognition and the exposure that the two of those women, and I use that term loosely, because I don't know if there's so much women as beasts now. But anyway, the attention and admiration and recognition that the two of them want, Foodie Beauty and Amberlynn Reed, that won't come until after death. That's very clear. That's not going to come until after death. So everything that they were fighting for, because neither one of them are fighting for anything now except for just the day-to-day, but everything that they were fighting for in their early years on the internet, I should say, maybe even their early years in life, that'll come later. That'll come after everything is said and done. That's when you'll really see it. So your Karina Kabooms, which big ups to her, your Old Lordiest Geordies, your Zachary Michaels, you know what I'm saying, your Fat Cow Chronicles, your Piggies, your Barbecue Chillin'. I could just go down the list. Your Chicken Pickles, Chicken Pickle just came back, so big ups, and so on and so forth. Right? All of those people. If you guys think that shit is fucking stuffy now, if you think shit is crowded now, you know what I'm saying? You know, it's just gonna get thick once one or both of those two end up checking out. That's when you're gonna really see it. And a lot of things that people are reserved on and aren't willing to talk about, that's when shit's gonna get spoken about then. DSP is no different. DSP is no different. And it's because of this obsession mole cows have with hatred, maybe just people online in general, to be honest, is what stems that. You know what I'm saying? Because it's kind of like, in a lot of ways, it's like social / political chess. Okay, hey, we want to expose this, we want to say this, we want to say that, but we can't. You know what I'm saying? Because they're currently alive. People may still sympathize with that shit. Not that people won't sympathize with them after death, but once you're dead, it's really hard to go ahead and fight for you when theoretically you've already lost the war. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of pointless at that. It's no different. And that's why DSP wanting to outlast people, or take solace in outlasting people, that's the reason, which led to why people call him a pig roach. That's the reason why he stands on that. You know what I'm saying? Another one bit the dust and I'm still here. So I can still continue to fight where they lost the will to, or unfortunately they may have just lost the fight altogether. There you go. And all it is just cope at the end of the day. But it's really sad that you have to scrape the bottom of the barrel to try to find a win. Or you're finding a win in the fact that you're just able to go on. In a lot of ways, I want to compare it to that line from Vince McMahon, where he got beat up by one of his mother's many abusive boyfriends, so I read, and one guy beat him rather ruthlessly, and thought he was dead, left him in a ditch, or something along those lines. And Vince wasn't dead. He may have been unconscious, but he wasn't dead, and he got up. And from that moment on, Vince said, "As long as I survive this, I'll win." For DSP, he may be an actual living embodiment of that in some ways. As long as he can weather that storm and whatever, and he can, I want to say stand tall on the next one, but DSP don't stand tall on anything. And he could stand for the next, or stand up to the next one. He's still winning. That's not winning. Existing and surviving are two separate things. I think DSP doesn't know the difference. I think slowly but surely, other people are starting to lose, are starting to lose that too. Like the lines are starting to be blurred because DSP's always there. He doesn't bounce back from these situations. He's just there. But if you hear a normie talk about it, they'll make it sound like, yep, he bounces back from controversy to controversy. He's still doing content. You don't have no choice. He didn't bounce back from shit. You know what I'm saying? He fucking PPP gave him back shots. Andy and fucking PPP did a bukkake all over fucking Kat's face and Jenna's face. Let's go ahead and throw her in there. And then everybody just went back to the next day to see what happens. That's not bouncing back from anything. He's just existing. And that's what the internet hate has kind of diluted to, or reduced DSP to, just existing. And he can't even tell the difference anymore. He just can't. There's nothing positive in DSP's life. Not his wife, not his family, not his cat son, nothing. He's just waiting for all of them to die off so he can replace them with something else if he can. That's all it comes down to. That's all it is. He lives for himself. He does for himself. He cries for himself. And that's it. He has nothing else. And I'll give you guys one more example before we close up shop. So DSP talks about, he'd like to do positive things like charity, for example. And he'd love to do that, but he has to wait until his reputation's in a better place. And then he believes people will deal with him, and then he can do the charity. You want to know what the reality is? It falls on two things. One, I would assume even back then, there was nobody that was willing to do a charity stream with him, outside of someone who was already in his little dent circle. Excuse me. Two, DSP don't want to do a charity because DSP can't get paid off that charity. If he was to do a charity, he probably would have do something no different than what Foodie Beauty did recently. For that, just in case you guys don't know the story, I'm pretty sure Sav has already spoken about it. Big ups to Sav. But if you haven't heard the story, I'll give it to you really fast. Foodie Beauty, at the time that I'm recording this, was probably only like 2 weeks ago, maybe. She was so down bad that she had, this is really disgusting to say this, she exploited a child with Down syndrome on a stream and collected a shitload of money so this child could allegedly go to a school that could help children with special needs. Now, the story is actually far bigger than that. but I'll try to give you guys the cliff notes. So they brought this. I won't even say the girl's name, and no, I'm not putting any pictures or any videos up there and shit. I'm a soulless, useless. Yeah, I'm useless in a lot of ways, to be honest with you, because I could be using my time far more productively. But I'm a soulless, useless, ruthless vato. But at the same time, I'm not putting a kid up there. Nah, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. Even a soulless piece of shit like myself has fucking boundaries and shit. I'm not doing that. Not at all. Anyway, she put a child. She put a disabled child onto a live stream with her, and they treated this child like she was a fucking puppy, like a fucking animal. And they collected donations off of her in the thought, or under the idea, or under the guides of, this money's gonna go to this child to get it's gonna go to this child schooling, to go to a special school that helps children with special needs. After this happens, the obviously girl world erupts, as one would expect, and Foodie eats shit for the better part of a week. Maybe it might have been like 5 days, it could have been 10 days. Now all of a sudden she's living out of a hotel, 24/7 room service, this, that, and the third. She said that she was going to provide receipts to prove that the money that was donated was going to go to this child's schooling. She hasn't done that. She also said that, the reason why she's able to afford renovations at the house that her and Salah are about to move into, and they're able to have this hotel thing go, and she's able to stay at this hotel, is because of all of the positive contributions that came through, which was far exceeding their goal, and she was able to use that money to do what she's doing. What she's not telling you, and this is what I suspect, there's no proof of this yet, is the reason why she had access to that child is because the family that was living in the home that Salah is, in air quotes, allegedly renovating was that child's family. She was having them evicted. And so she was having to babysit that child for probably a few days or whatever, while Salah and her parents were figuring out what they were going to do and how to move them out and this, that, and the third. Which leads back to why Salah didn't want her to come out there to Syria in the first place. Because the only place of residence that they had was Salah's family home. But there was someone already living in that home. They were already renting that out. So Foodie pushed this disabled child and her family out of their home. And then, because fucking Foodie is a fucking sociopath and a psychopath herself, she decided to, while she's supposed to be babysitting this child, she decided to go ahead and fire up a live stream and exploit them for profit. Exploit this child for profit. Exploit their disability for profit. And now, no one knows where any of the donation money is now. Because instead of going through a foundation and having people donate through her stream to that foundation, she wanted them to give all the money to her PayPal. Well, then how do you distinguish the donation money for this child and whatever money that people normally give her through PayPal? You guys want an example that how that applies to DSP? I can do that. Back when SOK was still in play, DSP had a thing where he would, you could donate to his PayPal, he'll play certain games and do all kinds of antics and shit. Well, people would ask for refunds when DSP didn't do things the way he said he was going to do, or do what he said he was going to do. DSP said he couldn't donate. He couldn't give them their money back. He couldn't do this, that, and third. So Fred did a test and donated him like $5 or whatever. I think within 24 hours, DSP donated that shit right back. So Fred's like, well, wait a second. How are you going to sit there and give me my money back, but you can't refund these other people who asked for their donations? What was DSP's answer to that? I'm sorry. DSP said, well, I don't know who it was who donated and felt like they didn't get their money's worth, and from people who are actual true fans. So how do I differentiate between those two? So how am I going to donate anything back? I don't know who wants it, who don't. I don't know what their exact amounts are. I don't know when they donated. How do I do that? I'm just going to end up screwing things up for everybody else. That was DSP's defense. Now, Fred, he proved the point. He proved that DSP is a hypocrite, and he easily could donate because he went out of the way to find Fred's pledge and find out how much Fred pledged, even though I think Fred said it publicly, and give it back. So why couldn't he do it to these other backers who felt like they were being screwed? Well, that's the reason why DSP doesn't want to do charity, because he's not going to go through a foundation like what Piece of Peace used to do. What was that, Jasper's Angels? He's not going to do it with what the way Tevin does it, which I think that's Extra Life. There's a couple other detractors who do charities too, and whatnot. They're not going to go. DSP is not going to go through it the way most people do donations for charity online. He wants that money to go straight to him and his PayPal or whatever the fuck, and then he'll donate that. Which means what, ladies and gentlemen? He's going to skimp off the top. Or if he's not, he's just going to hold all of it all together. Foodie's doing it, so why wouldn't I put that past DSP? And that's the reason why there's never going to be a charity stream. What he wants is to have public perception to be positive in such a way so he can bring as much money in as possible. So if he does have to throw some crumbs at St. Jude or fucking whatever, you know what I'm saying? And whatever charity of choice or whatever, then or Make-A-Wish or whatever the case may be, then he can do so. But then he can keep the bulk of it. And then if he has to point to something, oh, see, there you go. If you want an even better example of that, not better, but a more recent example, look at No Fire's Review Tech USA. He sat there and used to do those streams, and he would have all these antics and this, that, and the third. And if he didn't hit one of the goals or his main goal, he would, in air quotes, punish himself by donating $1,500 to charity. I don't know how I don't understand how you're punishing yourself by giving money to charity, especially when you have a sick child yourself. Semantics, though. And I want you to think about that, ladies and gentlemen. And I want you to think of those detractors that were fucking defending that guy. I want you to think about that. There was actual people who were defending Rich on that shit. I want you to think about that. Anywho, Rich, when he sat there and tried to push goals back and whatnot, saying, oh, well, I said I was going to do it by this date, but I can't. I'm going to have to push this back and all this bullshit, right? All this bullshit. Then someone ended up pressuring him. I want to say it was Lost in Space, who ended up being the tipping point and basically forced Rich to go ahead and donate the $1,500 to St. Jude's, I think it was. St. Jude, I'm sorry. And what did Rich say as in his defense? Oh, well, there's people out here fucking kids and doing all this weird shit, but you guys are going to get on me about this. Fine, here's the $1,500. Think about that. This dude put a restriction on himself that, hey, you guys can give me money. We're going to try to raise this goal, and then I'm going to do all these antics and shit once we hit the goal. Rich, later on, once the money started to really kind of flow in, wanted to push the narrative back, or push the goal back, and hopefully try to memory hole it if I had to guess. People called him out on it. The first thing he goes to is children being abused, and then going ahead and donating the $1,500 finally, as a punishment to himself. I want you to think about that. I want you to really take that into consideration. Now I want you to consider the people who actually donated to that shit and how they must think that this is the crash out they got for supporting this piece of shit. That's wild. That's wild. And then the fact that there is active, air quote, detractors supposedly talking to him in DMs and shit, and they're cool with that, being that they're standing on this shit, and some of these guys allegedly have kids themselves. All right, bro. All right, bro. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that's the end on that. Tell me what you think. Tell me how you feel, if you feel anything, and whatnot. That's what the scenario is. You know, we think about some of these lol cows and think that they're a glutton for punishment, but the reality is they need hate, and they need it in any fashion that it comes. So DSP talking about police reports, Rich and going out and buying a gun and all this bullshit, whatever. They kept entertaining it. They kept talking about it publicly. They must have wanted it. You know what I'm saying? Who's going to advertise that, hey, people are trying to come to my house and trying to kill me and my family? Who does that outside of an attention whore? You know what I'm saying? And if you think about it, in Rich's case in particular, and DSP's for that matter, but Rich in particular, he invited an unstable person to his home where his parents lay down their heads, where his kids on any given day lay their heads down. For what? For internet clout and content? hate is like anything else. It can be just as addictive as anything. So, like I said, as it pertains to DSP and his reliance and dependence on internet hate, it's something that's constant and consistent. It's reliable. Same thing with Rich. That whole situation with why do you think Rich kept going with Sly for as long as he did? It was a reliable thing in fucking Rich's life. Sly didn't need that shit. I'm sure he could have gone on and went and done something else that was far more interesting. But Rich kept responding. And in some cases, Rich kept lying on him. So Sly kept responding to it. And back and forth. But that was reliable for Rich. It was something consistent and reliable. Yeah, Rich wants to tell you, oh, well, I'm not going to entertain the guy anymore. I'm done with him, this, that, and third. He still had him on Discord. He didn't have him blocked. He was still responding to his streams. He was watching Sly's streams. You see what I'm saying? DSP is no different. No lolcow is really any different. Remember, it's consistent, it's constant, and it's reliable. Anywho, tell me what you think, how you guys feel. Thank you guys very much for listening in. I very much appreciate it. And this says I'll name this segment later. GTG spits that grease. So on and so forth. When you have nothing, ladies and gentlemen, you'll clutch on to anything. Is what it is. All right, take care of yourselves, my people. Later.